to Human Heritage, Preserving Palmyra, Petra, and Hatra. This event is the first public program related to the online exhibition, Return to Palmyra, mounted by the Getty Research Institute, which is located in Los Angeles, California, where we occupy the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Tongva Gabrielino peoples. I'm Frances Turpak, curator at the Research Institute, and on behalf of the Getty, we acknowledge our presence on these lands and pay respect to the elders, ancestors, and relatives of these groups. Now, the talks today will be given in both Arabic and English, and to choose between these languages, please look for the globe icon on the bottom of your screen to switch between the languages. We're really honored to have partnered for this event with ACOR, the American Center of Research in Amman, Jordan. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce Helen Malco, the Associate Director for Programming and Fellowships at ACOR. Helen has been a key consultant to Return to Palmyra since 2017, when it first launched as an English-only website. Not only has she been instrumental in ensuring the accuracy of the Arabic text in the current website, but she's responsible for organizing and moderating the talks. Entitled Human Heritage, the talks center on local communities and their important connection to heritage sites. Though we traditionally view ancient centers as places to preserve in order to better understand history, these sites can also serve diverse purposes, as is happening right now in Syria, where because of war, displaced families are seeking shelter in ancient ruins. It's this complex and ever-evolving relation between communities and sites that's at the center of our topics today. Now I turn this over to Piers Paul Kreisman, Director of ACOR in Amman. The screen is yours, Piers.
Thank you so much, Fran. And again, I want to welcome everybody here with us today. It's an exciting opportunity, and ACOR is excited to be collaborating with the Getty Research Institute and all of our wonderful colleagues who made those programs possible to make another one possible this evening. We have three wonderful speakers to hear from, and I don't want to hold us apart from them any longer than necessary. But for those of you joining us now who may not know ACOR, I just did want to take a moment to tell you about us. The American Center of Research was founded in 1968, and our goal is advancing knowledge of Jordan, past and present. We're an American nonprofit overseas research center. We are based in Alexandria, Virginia, and we have our primary center here in Amman, Jordan. We facilitate the acquisition of knowledge through research and dialogue with an extensive library and archive, fellowship and scholarship programs, and residential facilities here in Amman. We promote archaeological research, cultural heritage preservation, and knowledge sharing through lectures like this, digital resources, publications, workshops, and training programs. And we serve as a conduit for cultural exchange among students, professionals, and the public in Jordan and beyond. For more, please visit us at our webpage, acorjordan.org, acorjordan.org. It's in the Q&A and chat boxes. We hope to hear more from you later. And without any further ado, it's truly my pleasure to turn this over to our Associate Director, Dr. Helen Malco, who will be our moderator for the event. Thank you all again. Helen?
Thank you very much, Piers Paul, and thank you very much, Frances. And good evening, everyone. It is my great pleasure to be moderating this event with colleagues from Syria, Jordan, and Iraq. مساء الخير جميعا. في البدء أود أن أرحب بالحضور الكرام.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome everyone here from different parts of the world, and I would like to thank you for being present here with us from Amman. I would like to thank the speakers today for their efforts to prepare and to present these presentations today. This event is about Tadmor, Petra, and Hadar and their importance. These are cities that are recorded in the UNESCO Heritage site. We would like we will find out and learn about these cities and how to keep them and how to keep their heritage as part of the human heritage, local heritage, Syria, Jordan, and Iraq, and the Middle East. I'm going to introduce every speaker, and the speakers will talk about some issues dealing with these cities and would answer questions as time would allow us. Please ask questions through the Q&A box. And now I'm happy to present to you my colleague, Dr. Salam Al Kuntar, who is an associate dean of the Institute of the Middle East Studies. Dr. Salam is at the head of the association Syrians for Heritage to save the Syrian heritage. Salam, please go ahead. The floor is yours. Thank you very much, Helen. Thank you, Ecor and Getty, for hosting me in this meeting, in this great discussion. Let me share my screen. Today, I will talk about Tadmor, the city, the Syrian city that is very important, that dates back from the Roman area specifically, and I will give an idea, a historical view of the site and the events that took place during the civil war in Syria. Tadmor is a city that is located in the Syrian desert. It is an oasis, a green oasis that where you can see palm trees, and it produces famous Syrian dates, and it is also a center of a trade caravan. Tadmor dates back to the Assyrian era, and also is a place that is mentioned in the Bible. It also prospered in the Suluki era when Alexander Makduni governed the city. It was a great city. It was occupied by the Romans after that, when Pompey occupied the Syria in 64 BC, and during the era of the Emperor Tiberius, then Tadmor was included within the as a state of Syria, or within a part of the state of Syria. Tadmor was known mostly in the third century AD, when the king Ozaran ruled it and represented the Roman Empire in the east. And at that time, during the 3rd century, during the era of the Emperor Galilius, he fought the Persian Empire and won against them and beat the Persian Empire, especially along the borders between the Persian and the Roman empires along the Euphrates. It expanded after Odaina passed away, and during the rule of his wife, Odaina was assassinated with his son, with his eldest son, and his wife ruled with her son Wahabillah. He was the one who was the facto the ruler, and she dealt with the 2 generals in the Tadmor forces, Zabain and Zabada, and they realized great victories. They even conquered Egypt and the north of the Arabian Peninsula. This did not please Tadmor and Aurelian. Tadmor conquered the emperor conquered Tadmor at that time because he was upset and destroyed Tadmor. So this is the challenge that it presented. Tadmor has kept for us a great deal of heritage, a great deal of buildings. Here you can see the main building of the Zenobia Justinian wall. As you can see here in the plan, Tadmor was built upon or using a classic plan. However, it is a mixture of Eastern and classic architecture.
يونانية ورومانية. هذا هو الآلهة الرئيسية في تدمر، بل طبعا وبعلشمين إله السماء. وطبعا يرحبول وأجي
gods are Balchamin and Yaribol and Aljibol, who are the gods of the sun and the moon. Here we also find Nergal, who is one of the gods known through Al-Hadar. Here we have the Balchamin Temple, which is an important temple in its Eastern design. Showing here photos of Bel Temple, which is demonstrates a Semite design, and this is the holiest of the holiest places from within, and also the architectural design is Corinthian, as it is known in the Romanian age, and it is also an elevated foundation, just like the rest of Roman temples. Here we have the tower tombs. These burial places were common until the second century, and then below grade burial grounds became more common, and about 150 of these tombs were discovered, and they belonged to families, because sometimes about 300 to 400 people are buried at the same time, and they belong to rich tradesmen or military commanders. Here, this is an example that is shown in the National Museum in Damascus. It shows a traditional, an architectural marvel, and it's a Palmyrian art example. Besides the elites in Palmyra, the Roman elites were there, and they we show some drawings from that era. Additionally, we see funeral banquets here, which is a repeated view with Palmyrian writings or the Aramic writings. Of course, here the deceased is there with his wife and sometimes with the children as well. these are two examples of statues of Palmyrian funerary, and we see how distinguished clothing and jewelry are, and that distinguishes it from the rest of Roman past artifacts. The city was not a closed city, but it had different visitors or migrants. See, we noticed the presence of Egyptians and Romans, and we even Egyptian mummies were found in that area. Here, all these cooking items and similar to what was found in the Roman Empire. Here, we see the destruction during the Syrian civil war between years 2013, 2014. Palmyra was in the crossfire where some of the rebels, the revolutionaries who rebelled against the regime, and then we see the attacks on those temples and the impact of that. After ISIS invaded this area, there was great destruction. They completely destroyed the Balchamin Temple, and the sad incident of the death of Dr. Khalid al-Assad, who is considered the historical encyclopedia of Palmyra. May God rest his soul. Also, we have the Arch of Victory, which was bombed and destroyed. With the satellite photos here, we notice the destruction of the Holy of Holies sites, the Bell Temple, incomplete. Tower tombs here were destroyed one after the others. Some 7 of the large buildings were completely destroyed. Palmyra Museum, unfortunately, after ISIS raids, and before that, the Director General of the museums announced the preservation of the positions of the museum, but that was not accurate. Only 250 articles were preserved, but 25,000 other articles were there, and we noticed the level of destruction as ISIS left the area. And here we see the regime, the Syrian regime forces, as they sought help from this Russian army. They regained Palmyra in 2016 rather, and there was a great media campaign about reacquiring this area. However, ISIS came back, and during that time, UNESCO communicated with the Russian forces and the Russian government to talk about rebuilding Palmyra and saving it. However, ISIS raided Palmyra again, and because the Syrian forces, the Syrian regime's forces were busy fighting in Aleppo, and ISIS conducted despicable executions on the Palmyra theater. And between the two occupation periods of ISIS, the Russian forces used the city for political reasons and held classical music parties at the time when Palmyra's population were outside and unable to return to their country. The global reaction was condemnation and media coverage outside Syria. This is a new project that we can talk about during the discussion about producing replicas of Palmyra, and that is something I believe that Digital Archaeological Museum in Oxford produced this Arch of Victory and displayed it in London and in Times Square in New York. I would like to highlight the special place that Palmyra holds amongst Syrian people and the region in general for its people who depend in their life on the tourism activity and its value as a classical Eastern city that shows Syria as an original Semite city, but also part of the classical heritage and a mixture of different cultures and civilizations. Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا سلام على هذا العرض.
Thank you very much, Salam, for this presentation about the Palmyra city. Now I want to move to Dr. Ali Farajat. He is the Petra Tourism Director, the entity responsible for tourism and archaeological heritage in Petra. Before, he was in charge of the tourism planning and design in Petra. Please go ahead, Salman. Good evening. I speak to you from the Valley of Moses, the new center of El Petra region in general, and thank you to the organizers of this important and wonderful meeting, and my regards to Dr. Salam for this conversation. And we're sorry for what happened in Palmyra, and we know that the relationship between Palmyra and Petra during the Napti time was a good relationship. I'll start my presentation. Of course, Petra is the capital of the Nupti kingdom. Excuse me, I'm trying to control the computer. And so it extended from the northern parts of Saudi Arabia to all the way to Gaza Strip, Sinai, and the cities of Salah in the east. So this, it was mentioned by the Greeks in the 13th century BC, and there were a number of theories about where they came from, but the main theory we can depend on is that they came from the Arab Peninsula because they use the same names, the same gods, the same culture before Islam, and they controlled travel in the area. And at the height of that kingdom, which was the first century BC and first century after BC. As we see here, and as Salam mentioned, Romans controlled the area in the first century before Christ and established the area in northern Palestine, but the area of Petra remained independent, and for political reasons, it was annexed and on 106 EC and became part of the Byzantine Empire, and then became part of the Islamic Empire, and sort of disappeared or lost significance until it was rediscovered in the 19th century. And in the modern time, it became a very important touristic and historical site in the Middle East, if not the world. And I am in charge of the Petra Development Authority, which aims to maintain the historical and civilizational heritage. Our challenges are different from those other places. Thank God Jordan is a stable and safe country, and we hope that it remains so. But we have kinds of challenges in different areas where we have some and here on that map, we see the green area is the protected area, which is 262 square kilometers. And the area itself is 441 square kilometers, and the total area, inhabited area is about 179 square kilometers. Here we see the 6 residential areas in Petra, and our focus now is to talk about archaeology and heritage, actually rather about heritage. I will not talk about Nabatean or art or irrigation or economy. And just as Salam mentioned, Nabatean area had other people from different ethnicities in there. And as such, Nabatean art is a mixture. And so I will focus on the heritage and the challenges that we are facing currently and the efforts of the Jordanian country, especially that we are celebrating the 100 years of establishing the Kingdom of Jordan. Kingdom of Jordan is one of the advanced areas that cooperate on the world, and I welcome our colleague Barbara Porter and others from Accor. And these are the 6 residential areas in Petra. And here the issue is who has more access for tourism and how to benefit from this. Working in tourism is difficult and complicated in an area such as Petra, and so part of our mandate is to try to balance benefiting from tourism and bring along other participants. So we have the Valley of Moses and Sehun, which is adjacent to the touristic area, and its society is affected by tourism and affects it. Of course, the archaeological site in Petra depends on very rich findings, and it's one of the most important eras, which is in Nabatean. It's an international World Heritage Site since 1985, and I'm pleased to participate in the annual report, which will take place next year in China. It was supposed to take place last year, but was postponed till next July. And in it highlights the great role of the Petra Authority and the Jordanian government to maintain that archaeological site. And of course, we discussed that with the International Heritage Site, but there are advantages, pros and cons to that. In 2017,
in 2017, Petra became one of the initiatives and one of the 7 wonders of the world, and that increased the number of tourists that reached 900,000 tourists in 2010. It is a continuation of other civilizations over 10,000 years. We have, of course, this gives it a great deal of importance and specificity. The area is known with the historical sites and also with the beautiful sites. The area is beautiful and huge, and Petra is a magical city. So every time you go to Petra, you will be taken by its magic, and we would like to keep it and preserve it for the next generations. This is the archaeological site in Petra. Petra is very developed. From a touristic standpoint, there are more than 3,000 hotels, 3,000 rooms, and several hotels, several restaurants. The most important or the best tourist year was 2019, where more than 1.5 million tourists came to Petra, and however, in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic has really had its impact, and the area is suffering. However, there are signs of recovery. We use the COVID-19 pandemic to do some restoration work. The entry, one of the entrance gates to Petra. Basik is one of the most important entrance points. Its architecture has Egyptian, Syrian, and other kind of other civilization buildings. I would like to invite you to visit the new Petra Museum, where you can find all of these items presented in a very modern, technical way. This is the second largest museum in Jordan. However, it's the most visited museum. The Petra was rediscovered in the 812 by the Swiss traveler Berger. Most of the tourists would came from Egypt, and the travelers would talk about their encounters and how they met and got to know the societies. And of course, there are a great deal of fightings over this area because of the touristic advantages from 150 years ago. When in 1968, when Jordan lost the West Bank, there was a great deal of focus on Petra, and it was a subject of administrative plans that were done. In 2019, we had an integrated management plan for Petra. So we have a different kind of challenge. We don't have challenge with the wars, but the challenge is how to protect tourists and protect the sites. The priorities change with time, of course. We're talking about the beginning of the 20th century. In the beginning, the Western researchers believed that this was a Roman city. However, the writings in Aramean pointed to the fact that this was an Arabic civilization, and the kings were Arabic kings with their names, the Arabic names. So in the last few years, we moved to cultural resource management, and several projects that we are carrying out in the area are targeting this specific target. We have the first law, the first heritage law or public heritage law that was established in the 20th century. And we have several institutions that are working with us in order to safeguard this site so that it can be viewed by the entire world, and to have the capacity to receive these tourists. Everyone now claims that they are Neptian, so that they can, all the sites claim that they are Nabatean sites, so that they can attract more tourists. And we are working on it. We were working on keeping the value of our city. Petra is an economical center, a tourist center, but it became a symbol, a national symbol. So these challenges change over time, and the interest change over time. we cannot control the past, and we could not give the control the past to any party. However, in our planification, we must be careful to give credit where credit is due. We worked on the new integrated management plan. We worked on it with the cooperation of the UNESCO office in Amman to improve the carrying capacity and to improve the touristic capacity and the quality of service, especially in this archaeological area, to face the challenges, especially the destructions or the landslides that are taking place in this area. And we also want to make sure that the visitors are safe in this area with the participation of the local community. I worked for 30 years as a tour guide, and I worked in the heritage ministry. And the most important thing is to safeguard these sites so that it creates or it leads to a peace between the communities. There are several projects that took place in Petra in the middle of the 50s. USAID participated in the restoration of some pillars in Petra. Right now we're working with the UNESCO on the buffer zone. Petra is one of the 85 historical UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and we don't have a buffer zone. It's possible that people could lose their lands, and that's why they're worried about the buffer zone. We are restoring the bridges or the dams. We are working with the ACOR. We have a project with the ACOR to preserve the Byzantine Petra. There was a church that was discovered in 1995. We are working on several sites. This is a huge site. And the changes that are taking place right now are not easy. However, with the cooperation with our partners and with the income that we receive from the visits, and we can restore this area. With regard to the local communities and how they can benefit from this site, this is a challenge. The state or the government created lodging or housing for the people. Now we have a huge population density, so we had to find accommodations for the people who did not have any. We organized the relationship between the institutions and the government and the societies. It is very important to include the society in our work. We have a self-empowerment office so that we can make sure that we help the local community. It is very important to keep these heritage sites and to keep them safe. We are facing a problem. We're not talking about built heritage. We're talking about carved heritage. The carved heritage is affected with several natural phenomena, so keeping it and safeguarding it is not very easy. We are also working on developing tourism in this area so that we can improve the carrying capacity. In 2019, we had a group that came to visit Petra of 8,000 people, 8,000 tourists. So we are making sure now that we want to make sure that we have a tourist management flow so that every tourist goes in and comes out of the same entry and exit points. This is with the cooperation of the Jordanian University of Centers of Heritage. And the objective is to bring together all of the researches that were done regarding Petra and all of the statistics. Social awareness is something that is going on right now as well, public awareness. We are working on it. The numbers as far as tourism are increasing. The more the area or the site is known and respected and valued, the more the number of tourists increases. We have a populating sustainable tourism master plan that we're working on with our partners from Japan. We are working on expanding the master plan so that it could be located at an area that is far away from or far enough from the historical site. And also we want to increase our income from this activity so that we can continue to safeguard our site. I would like to thank you again for organizing this meeting. I would like to thank our partners in Jordan and outside of Jordan. And I hope that in the future, entering these sites would be easy, and we are very proud of this Arab historical website, and would like to thank our partners from international organizations. And thank you very much, and have a great evening.
شكرا جزيلا دكتور سليمان على هذا البرزنتيشن المكثف عن مدينة البتراء. أخيراً وليس آخراً أرحب بالدكتورة ياسمين عبد الكريم محمد علي، عميدة كلية الآثار في جامعة الموصل وأستاذة مساعدة في الآثار والفنون القديمة. هي مديرة مشروع الحفاظ على التراث المجتمعي للموصل، وهو مشروع يوثق المباني التراثية.
The director of Mosul Protection Project that documents for future improvements of the city. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Helen, and thank you for all participants on this meeting, and my colleagues, Dr. Salam and Dr. Sulaiman, for what they offered in terms of valuable information about the cities that are contemporary to Hadar city. Hatra, or City of Sun as it's known, is in the Nineveh province in the Jazeera area between the Euphrates and Dijla rivers, about 110 kilometers southwest of Mosul. It's flat land with no rivers or vegetation except for rare greenery due to rainfall. Hatra was established around the 2nd century before Christ. It reached its height in the 3 centuries following that, when it became the capital of Iraq, and it became the only city that can withstand the challenges of the Romans. It became a borderline between the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire. First person to discover Hatra was John Ross, Dr. John Ross, a resident physician who lived in Baghdad. He visited the remnants of the city and recorded his observations in 1836, 1837. Additionally, it was did by Walter Andre, the German archaeologist, when he was in charge of the exploratory mission in 1904 to 1913. This here shows the remnants of the city when it was newly discovered. First excavations in Hatra was conducted by the Iraq State Board of Antiquities in 1951. In 1960, restoration work started in Hatra. Hatra was listed on the World Heritage List in 1985. It was the first city in Iraq to be listed due to its importance for human heritage. The shape of the city, is, as we see it here, was approximately circular. The city was composed of two walls. The first one was about 2 kilometers with other castles. Then surrounding that, there was a long trench about 8 kilometers away from the wall, and the dimensions was support was almost 163 towers. This wall is low in height compared to the inside wall. The inside wall, which is about 6 kilometers long, is built of block with 8 gates and defensive positions. All these fortifications signify and highlight the importance of the city that resisted the Roman embargo for a long time. Here we see 2 walls. The first, the internal one, is about 3 meters wide, and the second is 2.5 meters wide. There is a sand line surrounding the city, which is about half kilometer away from the outside walls, and perhaps that may have been a form of siege that the Roman Empire did. Excuse me. In this city, there were many buildings and many worship houses. They were built with rocks and blocks. Of them, one of the most important is the main temple, and you can see it is quite large in size and was dedicated to worshiping sun, in addition to smaller temples, about 14 of them, and then there were statues of individuals that ruled that city in addition to the gods. One of the most important architectural things is the usage of the arched entry points that actually compared to Hellenistic and Roman style of building that depended on columns. However, in Hatra, there was great presence of arches. In Hatra, building these arches served several purposes. First, showing luxury and providing areas, greater areas compared to the style of using columns. The city was destroyed. Hatra
على يد شابور الأول الملك الساساني في عام 241. نعم.
So Hatra city was destroyed twice through its history. First time at the hands of Shapur the first, the Sassanid king in 241, year 241. The second time was at the hands of ISIS, as happened in 2014. It became a warehouse of for weapons, and ISIS destroyed all statues, all carvings that were at the faces of these buildings, as well as stealing many of the artifacts of these locations. And that destruction started on the 6th of March in 2015 and continued until these forces withdrew until April 26, 2017.
الأضرار اللي حلت بمدينة الحضر طبعا لحسن الحظ الحضر ما تعرض.
Fortunately, Hatra
نعم الأضرار اللي تعرض
harms to Hatra. Fortunately, Hatra did not suffer as much as Nimrud city, but it saw a level of military destruction, and where Hatra was the center of training for ISIS. During that time, Hatra was subject to numerous firings and the destruction of certain areas, including the main arch gate, as well as destroying the human and animal resources of the area. In 2001, here we see a photo of a room in the city of Hatra. As we mentioned, there were numerous statues of gods and rulers who oversaw ruled the city over different periods of times. In 2003, this room saw the collecting these statues and building a wall, an outside wall, to protect this portion of artifacts. And you can see many of them were broken in pieces. During that time, ISIS, and they controlled the area, these forces opened that room and destroyed all the statues that were in the room, as you can see here. And unfortunately, we lost a great artistic fortune that we could have kept had it been moved to the Iraqi museum or another city that was safer than Mosul. Additionally, ISIS gangs, as we mentioned, destroyed this room and destroyed the archgate. You can see on the picture on the left side, here is a VBED vehicle-borne explosive vehicle that was placed inside. And when Hatra was brought back under Iraqi control with the Iraqi army, we noticed that there were many holes dug out over about 150 meters that were filled with raw oil that ISIS prepared in order to burn them in these holes to benefit from the smoke resulting from burning these oils to divert the army and the military air force. Here we see in Hatra great destruction, and of the most important of this is the unregulated excavation along the Western Gate. the gate was not completely excavated, and so when what happened is that the forces started random digging along the western gate, and they uncovered rooms of different measurements, the number of which was 4. Fortunately, these rooms did not have any archaeological pieces. They were covered in a very conical ceilings. Here you notice the current situation in Hatra, and these are the columns that were subject to the firings, and you can see the impacts on the columns. In addition, the area during the withdrawal of ISIS forces was subject to many firings and shellings. Here we see one of these shellings that destroyed the wall that was surrounding the Grand Temple. Currently, Hatra, as I mentioned, is 110 kilometers southwest of Mosul city, which is the capital city of Nineveh province. Because it's far from the urban areas and being part of the desert, the local communities suffer the falling of this city outside the control of the Iraqi government. However, currently, there are many military Iraqi sites that could provide security to this area at the current time, in addition to establishing a military point in there in the city that belongs to the Popular Mobilization Force that protects the city. As we mentioned,
you can see here the Marin church or worship site that was a lot of it was destroyed and it was bombed and shot. You see here human statues that were broken with a hammer, and most of the engravings were destroyed in the city because they contained images of human beings or animals. Right now, the International Association of Middle Eastern Studies from Italy and supported with the Italian Foreign Ministry and with the supervision of the Nineveh Heritage Association. They worked on bringing back, on restoring some of these statues and bringing them back to where they were originally. Most of the damages that Al-Hadar was subjected to, as you can see here, this statue was destroyed as a result of the bombing or the shooting. At this point, we need, as research workers, as institutions, to safeguard heritage. We need a public awareness and a community awareness in order to keep these areas safe. The Ministry of Education also intervenes to safeguard this civilization and important heritage. Before we stop talking about Al-Hadar, I would like to say that in Hadar, the Aramic alphabet was used, but it was different, and it was not the same as the traditional Aramic language. we found signs of the Aramic language on certain sites and certain walls and certain religious sites. And I would like to thank everyone who listened to me and Dr. Helen for giving me this opportunity to talk about the city of Al-Hadar. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Yasmin, for this presentation on the city of Hadar. Thank you, everyone, for these important presentations. And I would like to ask Dr. Suleiman if you could please open up your video before we move on to the questions that we received from the public. I would like to say that there are common grounds between these three cities, and there are differences between these cities. All of the speakers, you discussed the importance of these cities as heritage centers, World Heritage Centers. However, these are local heritage as well. The three presentations mentioned the relationship between the local communities and these heritage centers. But this relationship that is always existing is not discussed in terms of the relationship between the local citizens and these sites. We would like to stop at some of these points, and I would like to start with Dr. Salam and the city of Palmyra. The relationship between the old Palmyra and the new Palmyra, and the space that Palmyra occupies in their heart. And I know that your family's origin is from Palmyra as well. Thank you for the question. First of all, my family is not originally from Palmyra, but they lived in Palmyra in the 50s of the past century, because one of my great grandfathers was working in the police force and lived there. For Palmyra citizens lived in the old city. People lived in the monument areas. These monuments were kept because the people were living inside the old city. However, during the occupation by France, the French authorities decided to move the people or the citizens to another site. We have kept one house from that period of time. We call it the House of Monuments. However, the relationship continued through tourism and tourist guides, coffee shops, restaurants, hotels. So this was a dynamic relationship. I don't know if you know, the Syrians generally don't speak a lot of foreign languages, but the people of Palmyra spoke English more than anyone else in Syria. So Palmyra is very distinguished. The people of Tadmor have a very specific characteristics. They believe that they are Nabateans as well, as Dr. Suleiman said. They believe that they are descendants of the Nabatean Empire, so they are very proud of it. Palmyra is one of 6 World Heritage sites in Syria that is being focused on in school curriculums. All students visit Palmyra. There's a Basra, Palmyra, Ugarit, Mary. These are all the cities that the school curriculum always focus on. So it's present in the Syrian mind, the Syrian heart, and the Arab heart in general. Great. Dr. Salam, you described the Palmyra for the Syrians. It is as Babylon is for the Iraqis, and I understand exactly what you mean. I would like to move on to Dr. Suleiman right now. The situation in Petra is different, of course. It is very important that as an authority to safeguard the city of Petra, how do you deal with the relationship between this city and the local communities? Good evening once again. The relationship between the local communities and the heritage in developing countries, in Arab countries, is very complex, because in the beginning, when these sites were discovered, people were not very highly educated, so they did not see the connection between them and the sites. So there was some kind of misunderstanding about the people who occupied this area in the past, Romans and others. So the tourism pushed people to identify themselves with Petra, so that they can make more money from tourism. The tourism plays a very complicated role in this area, and the NGOs as well as international organizations play a great role. So as an authority, we want to make sure that all the revenues that we have from tourism, that we can make sure that the local community benefits from it, but at the same time, we want to organize the relationship between the local community and these sites, because sometimes there are some people who want to take illegal advantages of these sites. So we want to make sure that everything is organized. The danger is in the economic situation and the competition between different local societies for these sites. Jordanians consider Petra to be a symbol for them. There are, when we talk about building the identity, there are countries that are trying to build their identity, and there are countries who have an identity, who have a past. Everyone here says that they have a Petrine identity, that they are the sons of Petra. So everybody, all the restaurants, for example, or the tourist places have Petra names. Even the Nabateans, after the Byzantine period and the beginning of the Islamic era, they mixed up with the other tribes. There is an important thing that we would like to mention. I would like to mention the discovery of the Petra Church in 1995 and the restoration of of this church. There are some names that were mentioned in this church, names from the 6th century. Some of the names are still present in this area. So this is some kind of continuity in the area. We would like to talk about the nature of the Arab and the Jordanian citizen, for example. The foreign tourists pay $70 to enter the site, but the Jordanian tourists pay $1. And you see that there's more importance given by the foreign tourists to the site. The local community sometimes tries to fight or resist any change. We have, for example, the horses that were part of the carriage that were present before. However, when we started to receive more tourists, these horses were being maltreated, badly treated. So we created a club to modernize, but also to convince them that the income that comes from these visits, from these sites, is income that is coming to them. So it's a question of ownership. We have 3 layers of relationship. We have in the international relationship, the fact that it's a UNESCO World Heritage is a rhetoric, but in reality, this is a local identity. Anybody who benefits from Petra, from tourism in Petra, has a better understanding or a better respect for the site. So we want to make sure that we have cooperation and not competition about these sites. And sometimes it is not easy to control. We know, Doctor, that the situation is complicated and it is not easy to control. However, it is important to understand the relationship between the sites and the local communities. I would like to move on to Dr. Yasamin, and the city of Al-Hadar. Thank you, Dr. Hanan. As my colleagues mentioned, the economic factor for the city and the local community that is surrounding the city plays a great role. We mentioned in the presentation, we talked about the city and the discovery of the city. The city did not was not the center or the focus of tourist groups until 2014, as happened in the other cities. Even if the monuments were in the city, were very present and very visible in the city from Nineveh on.
After the area surrounding the city has a Bedouin nature that does not appreciate or understand the value of archaeological sites and heritage in the area as compared to archaeologians in the city or even outside Iraq. The main point is that the area of Hatra, up until now, suffers from incursions. So it could be safe for a while, but then becomes subject to attacks. Sometimes the Iraqi forces withdraw, and sometimes they come back. And since 2017, we can't say ISIS forces, but you can say illegal groups. So this is one of the problems, in addition to the economic issue. Most of Western provinces suffered economically, and the young people, of course, will not feel the urge to go there unless they find a true benefit. Unless we have that stability and security, we cannot secure tourism and secure these areas under such security situation and economic conditions. Thank you, Dr. Yasmin. So the situation is quite difficult and complicated for Hatra. Let me move on to the questions we received from the attendees. There is a general question here, but it perhaps addresses Palmyra because it's clear that Hatra has buildings. So Salam, the question is, do you still have left remaining standing sites after the destruction? Of course, so there are buildings that remain standing, important ones. The 2 important temples were destroyed. Many of the tower burial places were destroyed. As for the museum, many of the statues were destroyed. As even some of the statues were in the garden, are being rehabilitated now by Polish experts. And they worked in the same site in the past. And unfortunately, the rehabilitation in Palmyra is difficult. So in Syria, there is also a question about emulating the Petra experience in Palmyra, but it's still a war zone. Most of the inhabitants still live in Turkey as asylees. There are economic sanctions against the Syrian regime, so you cannot have foreign funding. And Hermitage Institute in Lausanne, the city of Lausanne, is now digitally documenting. They are digitally documenting the sites that were destroyed. These are the projects that I know of, but there are many other projects because Palmyra is always a center of interest, and now digital documentation is quite common. But these are large-scale projects, and I think the Hermitage Museum is conducting an important and large project. As for rebuilding, no, that did not happen, and the security is still not there. And of course, the archaeological authority does not have the funding, and UNESCO cannot even send funds inside Syria. Thank you, Dr. So there is a question to Dr. Yasmin. Which site in Iraq now that non-academicians can help? Well, in the city of Nineveh, the world's eyes are centered or looking at the old city. Half of the city of Mosul, which is the heart of Nineveh, is destroyed, and the impact of destruction is quite clear. And the western side still has remnants of destruction and carcasses, and so perhaps the area that finds great help right now is Old Mosul, and I'm sure that you follow what's happening with Al Nuri Mosque and the Bayat Church, and getting a great interest right now, and that weakens the chances of Hatra, in fact, because it's a double-edged sword. So some areas that were subject to greater destruction see that interest. And as we want to care for Hatra, we see the world direct more of its interest towards the old city, especially that it's a populated area. Thank you, Dr. Yasmin. Final question is to Dr. Suleiman. The question is there an aerial picture of Petra that shows what has not been uncovered yet? Is it true that what have been uncovered is only 25%? First of all, Nabateans and their history are still obscure because they don't leave anything written. Most of the stories are by others. However, archaeologians say that there are two types of situations. The protected area is 262 square kilometers. There are two types: area that is excavated and has about 1,000 discoveries, and then the center of the area, which was the residential area and the tombs area. And some theories say that only 20% is covered. And we have GIS and satellite systems that document everything in Petra. And with our partners, we documented everything using some technology to scan underground. But we try to maintain what is uncovered. We do not intend to excavate because it requires management, it requires protection, and that takes a long time. But I want to give an example. I personally, when I was a little child, I worked in the excavation of the winged lions temple. And at the time, one of the most famed archaeologists was there, and nobody knew what it is. But now The temple is rehabilitated and has a management plan, and so it is ensuring interest. The mandate of our authority and the Jordanian faculties that have archaeology faculties have regulations, and there are certain seasons for excavations. So you find visitors from the US, French, Danes, most nationalities conduct excavations, but unfortunately lately Jordanian participation is winning for unknown reasons, but there is no proof of how much is uncovered and how much is discovered. However, the hinterland areas, you find there are a lot of archaeological findings in it, but the surrounding cities, particularly the Valley of Moses, and as I speak to you now from Petra's new cultural center, and where we're holding an event today, when we established this project in the early days, there were so many discoveries in the underground. There were Nabatean homes and villas, because Nabateans were wealthy, material wealth and cultural wealth. And so there are Nabatean temples in areas outside this region as well, in Ram Valley and even in southern Italy, because they were merchants. And so we think that what is being discovered, what hasn't been discovered should remain underground until we're able to protect it. And also we have the element of imagination, so that gives room for the visitors and to imagine. We also recreated the site with the digital tour after COVID-19, and we may hold a Sicilian dome. However, there is an issue of interpretations, because you cannot exactly know what it is. And the Nabatean architectural style is influenced by the Roman style as well. So Cardo and Maximus influenced that, but because Petra's area topology is different, we find some difference. And I'm sure the archaeologists in attendance here should probably agree with me that we should maintain and preserve what we have before we think of excavation. And if you allow me to speak about buffer zone, if you can answer quickly, please, Dr. Stefson, because we're over time already. No problem. The archaeological site originally was owned by ordinary citizens, but now after it's a preserved area, we have a buffer zone, which is a requirement by the UNESCO, is owned by private citizens. So we as an authority have to bring a balance between the citizen and the interest of the state. Thank you very much, Dr. Suleiman. I wish great success and continued success for Petra and the excavation in Petra. Thank you. And then now I move to Francis Turback.
Well, in conclusion, I want to bring us back to Return to Palmyra and say that this website was conceived with the classroom in mind. So for all of those in the audience who are professors and teachers, we will be putting out in August a study guide to the website so you can use it in the classroom, and it'll be both in Arabic and English. If you'd like to receive the study guide, please send a message to palmyra@getty.edu. This is Getty's first event in Arabic, certainly not for ACOR, but for Getty, it's a first. And we couldn't have done it without Chelsea Anderson, her close attention to detail, and the magnificent staff she has assembled behind the scenes. So thank you all for having us do this very complicated event. My special thanks to the speakers, Salam Al Kuntar, Suleiman Ali Al Farajat, Yasmin Abdul Karim Muhammad Ali, and Helen Malco. And also special thanks to the folks at ACOR and Pierce Paul Kreisman. You've been marvelous partners, and we hope we can do something again. Now, this event was recorded, so in the chat, there will be a link to where it will be posted in a few days on the Getty YouTube channel. Please pass the event on to colleagues or friends who were not able to attend. To the audience, we want to thank you all for coming. Let me say that geographically and alphabetically, you range from Afghanistan to Venezuela, and we're delighted to have had you today, and we hope you'll visit again. Thank you very much.